We are here for a very special bonus show, a show we do hopefully once a month, but sometimes we get delayed. But this month is our Patreon Nittany-level episode, where one of our Nittany-level patrons for measly 50 smackers a month, you too can get in the queue to produce your own bonus episode of this program. This is going live for the old patrons. They will get access to it early, and this will probably be up. Yeah, if you're listening, if you're a freeloader, so to speak, you're probably hearing this on the network feed, probably on Saturday, something like that. Not going to get a premium time slot. Come on, for free. But Maurice Jones is our Patreon level producer. And before I tell you what he's having us do today, we got a couple fellas here. One of them, you know what? I feel like Rico gets the short staffed. I'm probably always introducing the supposed, the actual co-founders of Lions of Liberty first. We're gonna put you to the side. Rico, it's been a while since you've been on a prime Lions of Liberty network spot.
I think my last one was probably
your mic could probably be a little higher too. Nope.
Day 3 of the Liberty draft, which was probably 4 years ago. So I'm still finalizing my team name.
Are you in classic style eating dinner while we just do this podcast?
Well, I thought I'd get it done. I had to call a client and she wouldn't shut up. So it was like 40 minutes. And then I was like, fuck.
What a bitch. People that pay money. So how about you go on mute for a few minutes, finish your meal.
It's going to take me a while. I can talk between bites. And
we'll try to get your mic a little closer. That's all I'm asking, really, at the end of the day.
Hopefully Rico's client texted him back and said, "You suck, lawyer," because that's the best feedback Rico
That
gave.
did happen, as you know. She did actually just text me back one more question. I'm like, you just talked to me for 40 fucking minutes. You have another question.
For those that might be new to the old Lions Liberty Network, Rico here goes way back with all of us. He is our first lawyer and our only lawyer. And when we need legal advice, we don't ask him if it's real, but if we don't actually need legal advice, then we ask him in that case. A star of many past shows, including the semi-defunct, because it's been hard to schedule, but the soon-to-return Conspiracy Corner, Degenerate Gamblers, all these shows that the Patreon Pride, the Lions Pride, is so familiar with. I don't know what happened, Rico. I think once COVID hit, it's just Rico seemed less important.
Oh, that's nice of you.
In fairness, a lot.
It's time to drop people from your life. COVID hits. You got to reevaluate your priorities. Like, well, I can drop this guy out of my life. He's a fucking dick.
That's true. We don't need to go that far just yet. But anyway, welcome back. It's good to have you here. Also, you know him from the program called Finding Freedom. He is an actual co-founder of Lions of Liberty. He is John Odermatt. Hello. I have
not only.
Are you ready to roar? Brian's not here, so I won't get yelled at for asking. Are you guys ready to roar or what?
No. Ready to growl.
What do bears do? They don't roar.
Growl.
They chomp. They eat.
Yeah, they eat people mostly.
So Maurice Jones honestly, I'm just gonna say right now, this dude is a Patreon of us mega stud, because not only is he a patron of Lions of Liberty, hosted by all of us in some way, shape, or form. He is also a patron of the Second Print Comics podcast, which I co-host with Remzo Martinez. He is also a patron of the Boring Podcast, if I'm correct. Is that true?
That's true, yeah.
I feel like actually he just quit. He said he needed to put all his money towards
then I quit this show.
We actually have a 100% retention rate of patrons on the Boring
That's
Podcast.
pretty good. That's actually better than, I mean, it's not that hard to keep two people, but
but
still, that's better than Second Print. It's definitely better than Lions. There is churn in the Patreon world, but one man who does not get churned, that is Maurice, motherfucker. I always want to say Maurice Jones-Drew because whenever I hear Maurice and Jones, I hear Drew after it in my other life, in my past life, if you will. Anyway, Maurice wanted us to review a little documentary that I actually saw like 10 years ago, actually.
Me too.
Called Grizzly Man. Now, he has not elaborated on why. And I don't care why, because he's paying us money. He's not paying us to ask questions. He's paying us to chat on a podcast and drink. By the way, are you guys having any beverages there? I know Rico's eating broccoli. And what do you have besides the broccoli? I want to know your full meal, Rico. What's your secret?
Raw broccoli. That's
raw broccoli. That's terrible for you, man.
No,
you got to cook that broccoli.
Oh, I want to hear about why raw broccoli is bad for the gut in 10 seconds or less.
It's not as bad for the gut. So you think about it, just like plants, there's different. They're made to not be eaten, so they're like to protect them to be grown. So it's something with like in order to break that down.
About, Odie? They're made to not be eaten.
Yes, because it's like they would not thrive and pass on and continue to grow. Joe Rogan did an episode on it.
Like they don't
vegetables are good, but as long as you cook them. Raw vegetables.
That's bullshit.
There's actually someone who wrote a book called "The Salad That Kills You."
Someone fucking wrote a book, so it's true. Because God knows, in the history of the world, no one who has ever written a book has been wrong.
But I will say that I don't abide by that advice. I do eat raw vegetables. I had a salad for dinner tonight, but I'm not a psychopath, and I don't eat raw broccoli because that's just crazy.
Well, there's two reasons I eat raw broccoli. One, I do believe it's more healthy. Two, I've never been able to make it good. When other
Have you read any books about why it's more healthy, or do you just assume it?
I think I saw someone post about it one time, and that was enough for me. But I do believe if you cook broccoli, it adds to the carbohydrates in it. So, whatever. Well, you can all you nutritionists out there, you can fact check me.
Meanwhile, I have broccoli smothered in butter with garlic and like salt and pepper, and I'm like, I am healthy.
It's good. Yeah. Keto. Yeah, butter that up.
Yeah. And I got some chicken tenders that I cooked on the grill myself. They're delicious.
And this is an interesting dichotomy here because you're trying to go super healthy. Now, what kind of chicken tenders are these? I guess I should clarify. Are these your own made chicken tenders, or are they breaded, frozen? You're saying
they're not breaded. Of course not. I would never eat such shit.
These are just actual chicken tenders.
Trader Joe's chicken tenders, just marinated in some olive oil and soy sauce, so nothing heavy.
Do you pre-marinate? Did you do this last night, or is this a quick marination situation?
Actually, if we want to go in so much detail about my food, Jordan
my goal is to talk more about your food than about the documentary Grizzly Man.
Jordan marinated it because I was in a time crunch. So I was walking the dog, and I'm like, fuck, by the time I get back, there's not going to be enough time to marinate. So I had to instruct him how to cook his baked potato. I don't eat potatoes anymore, too many carbs, but he can still eat them. He's a kid. And then I'm like, all right, I'm going to need you to marinate the chicken tenders. So I had him tenderize them. Then I had him mix the olive oil and the soy sauce, put them in a bowl, mix it up a little bit. And they weren't marinated too long. I kind of forgot to do them this afternoon, but good enough.
So a good replacement for soy sauce, since soy will turn you into someone who looks like Bill Gates. Coconut aminos taste just like soy sauce, but it doesn't turn you into a woman.
I can tell the difference, and I definitely think this isn't soy sauce, but it is pretty good. It's decent, but anybody who loves soy sauce will quickly know it's not soy sauce. I will say, I think, but I love soy sauce. Like I love it.
Soy sauce is delicious.
Everything. It's good.
Yes, soy sauce and whiskey is my favorite drink.
Do you have whiskey with you?
I am drinking.
Soy sauce and whiskey would be awesome. I mean, probably not. I would drink it. I would do it as a shot for sure. It wouldn't make it. It would make it. I mean, yeah. Why not?
Better than a Three Wise Men, right?
Remind me what's in the Three Wise Men again.
Jack, Jim, Johnny,
and soy, and soy sauce. What would you call Three Wise Men with a dash of soy on top?
You know, if we go to Pork Fest, I think we should all do shots of whiskey with soy sauce.
Okay, I'm in.
That'll be our.
What's your review of
broccoli in mind too?
My review of Grizzly Man is that soy sauce whiskey shots are terrible. So, what are you? Is that? Have we heard the whole meal, or is there more?
Yep, that's it.
That's it. What are you drinking? Water?
Yep. Any
alcohol in the house tonight?
Probably not. I got a lot of work to do after this, unfortunately.
Right, fair enough.
I do too.
So do I. Well, my work is just a call with the same people paying us money to do this show, the Mufasa call.
Doesn't sound like the same level of work, but whatever pays.
I actually feel like I have to be even more attentive on a call with the patrons because they're actually there to talk to us. They're not there just to listen to a podcast. You know, I can zone out on this thing, and if you guys are getting to something, and probably get away with it. In fact, I fully intend to.
Well, if Brian's on the Patreon call, you can just zone out because he talks way too much. Anyway,
that is actually the entire strategy of Mufasa calls. for anyone listening and wondering,
his latest daughter's latest ailment. That'll take up 1 hour of the show.
All right, so no drinks, but Odie is drinking. I think I saw you hold it up before, but I missed it. What was it?
Knob
Creek. All right, the Knobby Creek.
Sponsor of the show. I held it up for at least a minute, so now they have to sponsor us.
Now they have to send us money.
Yep.
The Knobsters. Rico's already left the podcast. He's like, I talked about my meal. It's over. I have nothing left to say. Odie, do you want to describe your dinner tonight, or is that after the podcast?
My dinner was not healthy. People were disappointed. I had pizza.
No.
Pizza.
And
is what's for
here
dinner
you
tonight.
are giving Rico shit for eating raw broccoli, and you had pizza for dinner.
Pizza's actually pretty healthy. It was thin
No,
crust.
it's
pretty healthy?
It's
Fuck are you
All right,
talking
tell
about?
me. Give me 30 seconds on why pizza's actually pretty healthy.
no, it's not. It's not healthy, but it's
okay.
it's not as bad as
Until you get to the bread,
other stuff.
it's fine. It's pretty much fine. And the cheese.
Yeah, cheese. Cheese is good for you.
And the processed meat.
I love cheese.
I don't know. I don't know. Something happened with cheese to me. Like I still eat it when it's there and I want it, but which is whenever. I don't know. Like, isn't it the weirdest thing ever? Really, if you think about what that is, what milk is, even like we're taking milk from another animal that's for their fucking baby, and not only are we drinking it, but then sometimes we turn it into like this weird moldy stuff that we eat. It's so fucking weird and delicious, but it's just so fucking weird.
It's delicious, but I mean, is it any different than taking an animal and eating it? I mean, it's
different.
You're
Yeah,
eating the flesh of another animal.
Yeah, it doesn't seem weird to me though, because all animals eat the flesh of another animal. I mean, all carnivores eat the flesh of another animal, but only humans drink the fucking milk and make weird moldy stuff out of the milk of another animal.
So along that line, to transition seamlessly into Grizzly Man. Grizzly Man, would you assume he's a vegan or a vegetarian? But they didn't mention it, so it makes me think he might eat meat. But that would kind of go against everything that he says in the throughout the whole documentary.
Well,
I think he eats
question,
non-cute animals. So if he doesn't find them cute, he'll eat them.
The thing is, the animals that he's befriended in his own mind, they eat other animals. So he can't really be opposed to it. That's the thing. Let's set the whole thing up here. Grizzly Man is a documentary made, I think, in like 2004, 2005 by awesome voiceover artist and documentarian Werner Herzog.
Werner Herzog.
You guys, of course, are familiar with Werner Herzog prior to this. I assume. Maybe Rico's not. He's not that cultured. Okay. He's also starred in an episode of The Mandalorian. So
I recognize his voice, that's for sure. I don't know if I'm familiar with him.
You've heard his voice. If you've seen any documentary, you've probably heard his voice. Yeah.
Now that you mention that, I did recall him.
Great. Brilliant insight. Okay. So yeah, he's real. He's a guy that exists. And he did this documentary. Well, I mean, he didn't do the footage. He just did probably the interviews and like put it together, did the voiceovers, but it's mostly compiled of footage from this guy. What the fuck is his name again?
Timothy Treadwell. Not his real name.
Treadwell.
He made up
the
Treadwell part.
Yes.
But
well,
let me point
there's
out
a lot of
something.
weird stuff about this guy.
So if you want to, go watch this after you listen to this episode, which you should.
Don't be like me and pay for it on Amazon like an idiot.
Yeah, I was just going to say, so what you can do is you can Google Grizzly Man, and you'll see that it's free on YouTube, free on Pluto TV, whatever that is, free on Tubby, free on the Roku channel. So basically, it's free everywhere, but Marc paid for it.
Yeah, I paid $3.99. Like
it was probably showing on the side of a building in the town that you live, like nightly.
They played in the town square. El Grizzly Hombre. Yeah. I do recommend watching it. Well, I mean, I don't know if you guys do. I like the documentary. I've already seen it before. I like it mostly for the reasons that probably most people like it. It's just something else to watch this guy. So basically, this guy, Timothy Treadwell, he has spent, well, the 13th, spoiler alert, if you haven't seen it yet, if you care about being spoiled for this documentary, which I can't imagine you would be, if you haven't seen it, and this is the time to stop, because we are now going to spoil the rest of it. Starting now. Okay, so he dies. he gets eaten by a bear eventually. But they reveal this pretty early.
They tell you that, yeah, very early.
They're not building up to the big reveal that he died. Like they're pretty clear. I think like 10 minutes in, he died. But he spent 12 entire seasons in the Alaskan wilderness living with grizzly bears, like living around these grizzly bears, because he just became obsessed with them for whatever reason. So 4 months out of the year, for 12 years, and then the 13th year is the one he died. So it was actually, and it was towards the end of that season. So he spent 4 months for 12 years. He spent 4 years total living almost by himself. He did have a girlfriend, and you don't see much of her. It doesn't seem like he spent a ton of time with her, but towards the end, he did have a girlfriend. And the only thing it seems like she got out of that relationship was to get eaten by a bear also, because she gets eaten too.
Pretty much.
But he spends 13 years living with these bears and is shooting this footage the whole time, shooting footage of the bears, shooting footage of himself, going on rants about this and that. Clearly, like living in. I have mixed feelings about Timothy Treadwell because he clearly lives in a fantasy world of his own creation. But there's something pretty awesome about it too. Like the fact that he could get this close to all these animals for that long and not die is like fucking incredible because he's right there. He's like these bears are coming right up to him, and it almost seems like he probably at some point did feel untouchable. I would think, at some point when he's survived that long and shooed the bears off enough times. But he basically, to me, he just built this fantasy world for himself where he was one with the bears and he's protecting the bears and this and that. But there's no evidence he did anything to protect bears or to do anything except just kind of slowly lose his fucking mind living in the wilderness. That's the way I see it. But I do enjoy like the footage of the bears and to be honest, I think my favorite part was his friendship with the foxes more so than even the bears. Because that I actually felt was
question about that
was genuine for the foxes. On the foxes
so
part, yeah.
Do you think he created a storyline with his hat and the foxes? Like, he's like, you know what? Season 8 of this documentary, we need to spice it up. How about I lose my hat to a fox and I'm going to chase it down and I'm going to have all these adventures? I'm like, or is he just that crazy? Or he's like, that hat is so important. Why? Why is this hat important?
I think that's definitely a worthwhile conspiracy theory to think about because they showed
the whole documentary is fake, by the way. So
who does? Rico does.
I mean, yeah, she kind of thinks the whole thing's fake.
Oh, really?
I think he really died by bear death, but
I don't think it's fake. But I mean, the guy, super eccentric guy. He used to be, not that this is an indictment of him or in any way, but just some background on him. Used to be a drug addict. Apparently, was second to Woody Harrelson to be the bartender in Cheers, and he didn't get that role, and then his life fell apart. I don't know if I believe that or not. So he invented this character, Timothy Treadwell, and essentially what Timothy Treadwell looks like. He looks like
just that he came in second to Woody Harrelson. I'm going to be dubious of that claim for now.
I came in third. So
well, he said a second, but his dad said second, but I'm not sure how distant the second was, or like how many other people were tied for second.
I'm not sure if he even actually got a tryout.
Did Woody Harrelson have a career before Cheers, or was that his first show ever? I thought he was an actor before that.
I think he was more of a comedian.
Yeah, I mean, he was something in show business. I don't know. Was this Timothy Treadwell anything?
No, I don't think he was anything. I think
so
he was a guy living in Los Angeles trying to be an actor, like so many other people in the world.
With the strangest haircut that you'll ever see.
The Prince Valiant haircut, as one guy called it.
What did he call it?
Prince Valiant haircut.
Oh, yeah, it's a good. Yeah, I can see that. Essentially, no forehead, and his hair never moves from his forehead. But no, I mean, I kind of have a different conspiracy. I mean, I think everything that happened. I think it's real. He was living with the Grizzlies, but I actually watched a 10-minute summary of what went wrong with this, and the people were very mean to Timothy Treadwell, calling him stupid, which maybe he is, but so when he got killed, him and his girlfriend actually had already left for the year, and I don't think they talk about this in the documentary, which is interesting. So on September 25th, they left. They were at the airport ready to fly back to California. And he got in a verbal altercation with the airline attendant because the cost of the tickets were so high. And then he saw a weather forecast that showed it was going to rain a lot in the next week. So we thought, oh, well, the streams will rise up again. They'll be filled with fish and the bears will be feeding again. It'll be the greatest thing ever. So they turned around from the airport and went back again at the end of September. End of September through October, that's like prime bears, at the very end of their, before hibernation, eating anything they can just to get enough sustenance to make it through hibernation. So he goes back into that environment, which I don't think he'd ever been there that time of year before. And apparently he parked himself right next to one of the most traveled bear trails where the bears literally could not get to where they wanted to go unless they went right by his tent or if they swam through a lake. So they had to come past him. So my theory is that he essentially killed himself or just went insane. and took this poor woman with him in his blaze of insanity.
You mean he wanted to, or he's just so negligent that it was bound to happen under those?
No, I think he knew exactly what he was doing, though. Well, maybe that goes into what Marc was saying. They thought he was invincible, and he was just wanted to push the boundaries as far as possible. So maybe that's it. But
I mean, it seemed like he was going to keep pushing it until he got fucking eaten by a bear. I mean, he would constantly go super close to them. And I think my favorite part about this documentary is how Werner Herzog, he is so critical of him the whole time. Like, he's never he's really never even mourning the loss of Timothy Treadwell. Like, he is pretty much hard on him the whole time. He's like, nope, I pretty much think he was losing his mind. He's like, he was being unreasonable here. He's like, no, the Park Service isn't his real enemy. And I just enjoyed that narrative throughout, because this was not
like, do they know each other?
No, I mean, he just but he made the documentary.
It was just like a third party. Yeah. Judging them from
exactly. Yes, that's what I think is hilarious.
I'm sure. So how does that work? Did I guess Treadwell's, maybe that other woman, I guess, owned all the footage and probably sold it to him to make the documentary?
That's what I imagine. Yes. I assume that footage was purchased for a price. And he realized
the one guy, I don't remember who he was. He's like, yeah, I think he pretty much got what he deserved. I thought that was a little harsh. Like, I don't think he did anything bad. I don't think anyone deserves to be eaten by a bear. Like, maybe he got what was anticipated, but I don't think he deserved it. I think that was quite harsh of a statement to make.
I don't think I'd wish being eaten by a bear on the person I hate the most in the universe.
Fauci. I wouldn't lose any sleep if that happened.
It's got to be one of the worst ways to die, because you got to think, like, there's a long time when you're not dead yet, unless it just like crushes your skull, like, which would hope for that. But if it's just eating your freaking internal organs out, that'd be pretty bad.
I think you would die or go into shock like long before you're just. I don't think you'd be literally sitting there conscious watching.
There goes my arm. Shit.
No. Oh my God, that's my arm. No. Don't eat my. Oh my God, that's my leg. No, I think you're done. Like, you lose so much blood.
I hope so.
Quickly. Your body just shuts you down. You know, our body has defense mechanisms. It doesn't let us feel too much pain immediately, for the most part. Yeah. So I mean.
So wait, I didn't see the end of the movie. So what? I didn't see the last 15 to 20 minutes. I didn't have time. Was it any different? Because it just seemed like
I think they just crazy. They take the guy. Well, you were saying that how the two people that Werner was hard on him and that other guy was hard on him. One thing that was interesting is he does have some friends who seem to be very loyal friends. The one guy, his friend from California,
the actor guy. That's the guy that felt fake to me. He always felt like he was. He was an actor. They said, like, this guy's name, actor, and then but he felt like he was acting when he was giving like his little speeches. He seemed like oddly, or maybe it's just because he is an actor. That's the way he presents things. But he was always like, it seemed like he was reading on a cue card to me. I don't know. That guy felt off to me.
Maybe, but he
seemed to. He's a weirdo actor guy. Though. Could be as simple as that.
Yeah, there's a lot of people like that in California.
Indeed.
But I don't know. Maybe he was full of shit, but he seemed like, because they're asking him like, well, would you care, or did you care that, you know, he lied to you about his background? Because Treadwell made up this story that he was an orphan from Australia, which he didn't have an Australian accent. He just kind of talked a little strange. I don't even know how to explain it. He made up the name Treadwell.
Australian at all. I don't think they were describing the way he talks in those videos as Australian. I think he created this persona where he wasn't Australian, and maybe when he first met people, then he kind of had this weird Australian. But I don't think we're supposed to think he was trying to sound Australian in the videos we saw.
I don't know, because they said his weird accent. Like, you're supposed to have heard this. Oh yeah, his weird. I don't know. I didn't get that part.
He just sounds like an excited fellow. I guess would be one way to put it. Yeah, so I don't really remember how it specifically. The movie just kind of wound down. It didn't really. There wasn't like a specifically dramatic ending per se. I don't think Rico missed anything. Too much of note. But
I remember what I was going to say. So they talked to a bunch of other people. They talked to the actor guy who seemed to be friends with him, and Who knows if he's fake or not? And then a couple different women. Well, there's the one woman who had all the footage and who Werner gave the watch to, or someone gave the watch to, who used to be his girlfriend, used to work for him, but is not his girlfriend, and seemed to be totally fine with like the other chick that was his girlfriend.
Yeah, that was weird. She she was such a wonderful person. Like, oh, this is weird. You don't often hear the ex-girlfriend talk so glowingly about the new girlfriend. Like, it would have been almost more interesting. Like, I hated that bitch. Glad she got eaten by a bear. But,
well, I wonder if there was a battle for who owned the footage, since it was probably worth a good amount of money. And
I don't know if they could have known it was necessarily worth a lot of money. I guess just for like nature channels and stuff like that. That footage it probably has value even on that regard, because it's so like you don't see up close footage of bears like that too often. Like that is
why, that's a good question. Why did that woman own the footage? I know they had formed some kind of like
that's a good question.
Group, like a nature group, but doesn't mean your will goes to another like club member you're in.
How does that work? Yeah, I mean,
unless he specifically
maybe he's doing the footage for that group. Yeah, maybe in theory, his project is under that group, so therefore, I guess it would belong to the group.
Maybe this is another area of law I should branch out into. Like estate rights of people eaten by bears.
That's a very niche law. That's where the money is. It's in the niche. That's what they say. That's what I say. I have no idea. I don't have the money to prove that it's true, but that's what I believe.
Well, there's only one way to find out. If anyone has been eaten by a bear and you own footage to their rights, please contact.
we should make a faux commercial, which could maybe work as a real commercial too.
Have you or a loved one been eaten by a bear?
Was it caught on tape? Do you think that tape has value? Is there a dispute over that tape? If any of this remotely applies to you,
that would be a funny fucking commercial.
I got nothing better to do.
So it wasn't his parents that owned his footage, owned the videos, because all they got was his old teddy bear.
So what?
That he slept with in the tent while stalking bears. Essentially, here's the one big thing about that really goes against his claim that he was out there to protect the bears. I think in his mind he was protecting the bears in maybe a PR way or something, because he would go to schools and talk about the bears and show the footage of the bears and all this. But like when the shit came down, when there's these poacher guys there, or maybe they weren't poachers, I don't know, they didn't shoot the bear, but they were like throwing rocks at the bear. He's hiding and filming it. He's not protecting the fucking bears. Like I don't know how he designed this idea in his mind that he was protecting the bears, unless it's just by creating awareness that the bears exist. But I think people know the bears exist. I mean, so I don't really know. I think he created this entire fantasy in his mind where he's friends with the bears. I mean, he even used those terms. These are my friends. These are my friends. And after 13 years, spending 4 months not being eaten by them for 12 years, you probably do start to just convince yourself this wild beast that hasn't killed me yet is my friend. But go ahead.
I think this is not pretty common, but relatively common phenomenon where people think that they've started to control nature. You see it in other aspects. Like if you ever watch Shark Week and people free diving with great whites now, and it's like, well, I know their tendencies. I know what can trigger them. And it's like, there has to be some kind of euphoria or rush that they get.
Oh, for sure.
Some sense of, they're above the average population because they have some control over nature, and they just fell within that. And it's ultimately delusional. Obviously, it's, you can't predict a wild animal. So,
well, it's not as bad as the women that have sex with dolphins. That would be
Is that real?
Pretty sure that's real. Yeah.
Okay, Odie. So you're saying you would rather get eaten by a bear than have sex with a dolphin? That's interesting.
So you'd rather have sex with a dolphin than get eaten by a bear?
Yes. I'll go on.
If you're
record.
wondering how all this relates to the ideas of liberty, don't bother wondering. Just enjoy the ride, everybody. This is not about anything other than us having a good time talking.
Lions of Liberty supports having sex with dolphins. I think that's what we've learned today.
I mean, I suppose we could discuss the
the non-aggression principle as it relates to the dolphins' consent?
Well, not now. I mean, the dolphins clearly. Well, I don't know if it's clear because dolphins are actually highly intelligent. They say even close to, if not as intelligent as humans. It's just that they can't communicate with us in the same way, and they don't have these, these fingers, arms.
Did dolphins lock down during COVID? I would say no. Therefore, they're smarter.
They are libertarians.
Is there a dolphin Fauci?
They pushed him up on the beach and they just let him die there.
No, not on. I was not going to say the libertarian implications of dolphin sex per se, but I this is one that's I think always difficult to grasp your head around. Everything's difficult to grasp your head around when you try to apply the 100% strict libertarian anarcho-capitalism into the real world and paste it on top, because that never works. But the idea of like conservation in nature and national parks and this sort of thing is always like, I don't know if it's a tough one for everyone, but it's a tough one for me because like I think there is something to that. I think there is something to preserving certain aspects of nature, but I'm also not, I'm not like someone who says you shouldn't kill animals or shouldn't eat them or shouldn't, chop down trees. But there is something to that, and there is something to the idea that the free market run amok on that. Not the free market, I should say. I think when it's the state run amok in the sense that the state controls the land, and when the state says, "Hey, free market, do what you want in that land," that's not really the free market. That's really the state managing the anarchy, I guess you might say. But it is a tough concept when you think about property rights and this sort of thing, because who does have property rights to giant swaths of land? It's the government's obviously like that's not really legitimate in any kind of strict philosophical sense, but who else is legitimate? Like it's almost impossible to have anything but a sort of tragedy of the common situation, government or not, for a lot of these largely uninhabited areas.
In reality, it's always going to be who is the most powerful. Yeah, so it falls down to the government. But if you want to say, well, the government should be involved, then it's going to come down to who's the most rich and powerful that's not in the government. Who is going to benefit? Is it going to be, a super billionaire like Elon Musk says, you know what, I'm going to buy the entire Alaskan territory and make sure that it's not polluted? And that's just not realistic. So I don't know.
Probably afford Alaska. How expensive?
Yeah, but he's not going. There's very few people that could actually do that. And when you're that rich, they probably don't have the desire. So it's going to not be as preserved as most people would like, but I don't know the solution that's not at the state level for it. Because you can't just say, I'm just going to sue. If you pollute it, you're going to be sued. Like, okay, well, that's not going to work either.
Yeah, I don't think there is a pure libertarian solution to conservation, really. Like, and libertarians will say, well,
there's not really a pure libertarian solution to a lot of things. Yeah. That's the lesson of the last couple of years.
Libertarians will say, well, those that want to conserve will, have, areas, landowners who come together and conserve those areas.
Which does happen and is real. So like, yes.
Yeah.
In times and places that will occur, which is great. But it's certainly not going to be the status quo anywhere.
But yeah, it's definitely not going to be the status quo. I mean, we've seen that as things have played out, just look how much, different herds of elk and buffalo and all kinds of animals have just been pretty much almost wiped out.
Like just for a micro example of like, okay, so like Werner Herzog at one point, he's like, I feel like he went pretty hard against Treadwell too. He's like, this guy was flagrantly violating a number of rules, including the very reasonable one, which I would agree is actually a pretty fucking reasonable rule. Maybe you can say that makes me a statist if I agree with a rule of a national park, but I'm just saying it sounds reasonable. Don't go within 100 yards of the bears. That sounds fucking reasonable in every way, shape, or form for the humans, for the bears, for everyone involved. There's no good reason for a human being to get that fucking close to bears, except they've created this fantasy land where they can do that, and they live with the bears and they're part of the bears, and they want to get this footage. I think a big part of Treadwell for me is he's a hypocrite. Like he doesn't want anyone going near the bears. He even at one point goes on a rant against the tourists. He's like, the tourists with their cameras, and I'm like, you are going up to these bears' faces with a camera and like interfering with them. He interferes with nature like a lot. He builds this thing in the stream like for the fish to go. Yeah. That's interfering with nature. So he's a complete hypocrite. he thinks he's the savior of this whole place. Meanwhile, everything he's upset about other people doing, he does in some way, shape, or form. And I don't think he has a malintent. I think he that's the one good thing you can say about him is that I think he has a good heart, and I think he means well. And I think really ultimately this is a story of someone's sort of salvation for a time, because it sounded like he was on, he even said he was drinking every day. He tried to quit stopping drinking a million times. He couldn't stop drinking. And finally it was the bears, living with the bears, that like somehow gave him this strength to stop drinking. So I think to him, they had a kinship, but I think the kinship was one way. I don't think these bears think two shits about this fucking guy. Like, if anything, they tolerated his existence because they weren't that hungry. But when
the bears have a full belly, I mean, they tolerate him a lot better than when they're.
That is an interesting question, though. It's like, why did it happen when it happened? I know
this is the part. This might be part of what you missed. Like they kind of go into how there was like rain issues towards the end. There wasn't enough rain. There wasn't enough fish, and like a lot of the bears were like starting to get hungry. So like maybe they were in a bigger need. Like humans probably aren't ideal food, but if you're starving and you're out of fish, and they show the one bear keeps diving for fish and isn't finding any. I mean, obviously it's all selectively edited to tell a story. But if it's true that, the circumstances were, maybe he just got a hungrier bear who was just fed up with this fucking shit. Or didn't even know this guy from anything. He's an object,
Yeah, I did see a little bit of it where I think that was the end where he was like yelling at God about not having, it was like, we need 2 inches of rain. It's like,
the first thing
somehow nature has survived for millions of years in this cycle without you intervening.
I was like, I guess it's nice he's turning to the Lord or to God for some sort of salvation here, but I'm not an expert at all. I don't think that's how you're supposed to pray. It's like, I need rain. Give us a fucking rain. I'm like, I don't think you're doing it right.
God responds to threats.
Probably not the right.
Replace the Our Father with a bunch of curse words. That's the new Sunday prayer at Mass. Just a bunch of FUs at God.
He yelled at God and he cursed him out. And look what happened to him.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, maybe that was his problem. Maybe that's the real lesson we can take away from here. But I mean, this guy, he was everything. In many ways, he was everything he didn't like. Obviously, except for killing. He didn't go trying to kill bears or anything. But he was everything else that he didn't like. He didn't want humans getting involved in this area. He didn't want the humans interfering with nature. But he was doing that every day of his life.
So speaking of that, do you remember the one point when the poachers who weren't poachers, they were just, people watching bears too. Yeah, they weren't poachers. When they show up and he's hiding in the bushes, videoing them. And then they leave and he goes down like by the shoreline where they were. And he's like, look, they wrote me a note. We'll come back and see you next year, Timothy Treadwell. He's like, well, what does that mean? Is that a threat? It doesn't sound like exactly a threat, but it's not a nice thing to say. And he walks over somewhere else. There's like a little smiley face on a rock. Another place they stack some rocks up. He's like, oh, I don't know about the stacking of rocks here, what this means. This could be a whole host of things.
That was him creating a storyline for season 9, Odie.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I think he was, because I mean, he has all this footage. He definitely planned probably to make a documentary himself, I would think. So he's putting it together. He's developing the narrative.
He spent 13 years shooting footage. When was he going to start editing it together? He was like, someday I'm going to sell this to Werner Herzog. I'm like, well, you did get.
Is that a Howie Snowden impersonation?
Timothy Treadwell.
What did he do the rest of the year?
My King John. I assume he worked some like waiter job in Los Angeles. It would be my guess, because
there's no way he could that guy could just reintegrate into normal society. There's no fucking way. Can you imagine him serving you food? You'd be like,
I bet he did.
A grizzly bear wouldn't be doing this.
I bet he worked at Disney.
He's like the cashier. He's like, what the fuck is this shit? Like, I should be a bear. Like, he even like said like
bears don't have to work. This is bullshit.
Transforming into a bear. I think that's part of it though. Like that there is like a certain simplicity to being in nature and watching animals and just being like, man, like back in that other world, I have bills, I have fucking stress, I have this and that. But these bears, like, they just get up and be bears, and like maybe they go eat some fish, maybe they eat me eventually, but they're just bears. And like,
except for the times they get mauled by other fucking giant grizzly bears who are trying to bite their neck off. That part doesn't sound fun to be a bear.
For a while,
like with the part where they ate that when they were starving, when they ate that baby bear. just devoured him. All those left his little skull.
That's the big fantasy of a lot of like nature type people. I mean, I consider myself a nature type person, just one that hasn't lost his mind about the whole thing.
Naive nature type people.
Yeah, they're like, oh, the humans are the worst. The humans do this and that, and you shouldn't. Like, do you see what the fucking animals do to each other? Like, their own baby when they're just a little hungry that day. Like nature is so much harsher than any human could even dream of being. Like, people have just no idea. They think that animals are just floating around in harmony with like rainbows and then one day evil man shows up and starts slaughtering them all, and they would have all lived these long, plentiful lives otherwise. And that's not how it works. But anyway, the foxes didn't. I wasn't dear to the foxes.
Yeah, well, Treadwell gets all mad when the wolves apparently kill one of his little baby foxes, and he's there, doing a shot next to the fox that flies all over it. I'm laughing because at one point, like a fly lands on the fox's eye. He's like, "What the fuck? Have some respect! Get out of here, fly! Don't do that in front of me."
He is quite an entertaining character. He seems like the kind of guy that would not be fun to be around for more than 10 seconds because he would quickly overwhelm you. He's like Howie if you didn't like Howie, I think. This is how I would describe him. Howie gets away with it because we do like Howie, and he is extremely fun and entertaining. But yeah, I mean, can you imagine Timothy Treadwell on a podcast with Howie? This one's about bears.
That should be the real conspiracy corner. That would be amazing.
What else? What else do you want to talk about? Why don't we wrap up our talk on this documentary? And if you want to chat about some other things, we can. How do you view this as? Okay, I want to rate 3 things. No, 2 things.
Rate 3 things? What?
We're not doing that. That's for bonus show content only. I want to get your judgment of Timothy Treadwell, the person. Forget the documentary, but just obviously whatever we learned from it. What do you think of him and what he did living with the bears and everything? And then B, the documentary itself and how Werner Herzog put it together. And C, what do you think of this podcast? I'm doing the Michael Mouse. What's your favorite part of this show? So you have 3 questions to answer each. I hope you can remember them all because I already forgot. I've been drinking micheladas. Odie, start talking.
I'll go first. So are we rating on a scale or we're just rating with words?
Whatever you feel like. You can even rate them differently. Odie can rate them on A to B, A, B, C.
I would give
numbers. I don't know. This doesn't need to be legitimate.
I would give Timothy Treadwell 1 thumbs up and 1 thumbs down because he's a very complicated person. Very entertaining, as we've talked about. I mean, for that reason alone, I recommend watching this documentary because the guy is a freaking.
I was engaged.
He's a character. He's insane. And I mean, there's this part where he does this crazy rant on the beach when he's ranting against the National Parks Service and talking about the poachers and he's protecting the bears. And then it's kind of crazy because then he'll do his scene like he's like thinks he's an actor, and then you hear like the background noise as the camera's still rolling. But he's like, "Oh, got a little angry there. Oops, got a little out of control." He's like talking himself down. So he's a complicated guy, but I mean, it's thoroughly entertaining. The documentary itself.
I think my favorite part of him was which I think the brilliance was the way Werner Herzog had this edited, where he's going on that rant against the national parks. He's cursing and cursing and cursing. He's going nuts, and then like they bring down the audio so you couldn't really hear him when he's just cursing. While Werner's like, at this point, Timothy was starting to have a meltdown. And then they go back to the audio. He's like, these and then they go down again. It was just so brilliantly done.
Yeah. And I mean, because of the editing like that, I mean, the documentary's 2 thumbs up. It's one of my favorite documentaries. I'd forgotten about it. I watched it when it first came out, and I feel like I knew about him before he died too. I think I'm remembering that right.
Like that for his work with. I mean, they even showed a footage from like a 2020 interview. So he was like a semi-known figure. Like I'm sure the random person on the street would have no idea who he is, but he definitely had some sort of national media attention.
Yeah, for sure. And then the third question.
He's the fascination. I mean, he deserves to be analyzed in some way.
The third question, my favorite part of this show, is actually the pre-show, which you'll have to sign up for our Patreon to listen to that. So you can go to lionsofliberty.patreon.com or let's forget our locals.
True. None of what you just said is true.
Patreon.com/lionsofliberty. I got the Brian McWilliams coming out. Or you can go to lionsofliberty.locals.com to hear that content.
all true.
I almost said for free, but it's not free. You have to pay.
No, it's the opposite of free. Rico, first of all, first question. Do you remember the 3 questions?
I do.
You're sober. You're
very good. Yes. That will go to the end first.
Okay, by the way, I saw you eating that raw broccoli earlier.
Yeah.
I heard that's bad for the gut.
That's my favorite part of the show, talking with Odie about how plants aren't made to be eaten. No, I believe that was the beginning of this show because you asked me what I was eating, and the bonus show was the
Rape Weekly. Called What's Rico Eating? It's a nightly show. It starts whenever Rico gets home. We just talk about what he eats and whatever conversations might spark from that, and then we sign off. It's like
I have a lot of follow-up questions for Odie on the next show. Like, can I eat celery raw, or is that bad for you?
I've never had cooked celery. I wouldn't even know what to do with.
I wouldn't either.
In like stew, but that's it, or soup.
Yeah.
Stew and tuna.
A lot of questions we can jump into next show. My perception of Timothy Treadwell, I mean, the guy lived his passion. Like, he fully jumped into it. And most people in the world, 99.9% of the people, can never say that they actually lived what they loved and the way they wanted to live. So, I mean, I don't really have
right now if I'd be that.
Yes.
Or at least, no, that's not true. I'd be a pro wrestling manager who didn't.
Paul Heyman's living what he wants to live, but other than that,
what I would be.
I don't really. He got a lot of shit, I guess, because his girlfriend died, and obviously terrible tragedy as well. But I don't know that he sold her a bill of goods. It seemed like women were likely attracted to him because of his eccentricity, and he was well known for being a grizzly bear fanatic and living in the wild. Yeah,
but apparently she was terrified of bears.
Oh my God!
Well, it seems like she made a bad choice. Like, you know what? Like when they meet on Bumble, and he's like, you know what? I love to live with grizzly bears. It's my favorite. I do it for 4 months a year.
She's not terrified of bears. I mean, maybe she is, but that's probably isn't that the default position? Like, if terrified of a bear, we're all going to be terrified of bears. I'm not terrified of them when I'm sitting there watching a documentary, but if in real life, of course, I'm terrified by a bear.
Of course,
Treadwell is the only person not terrified by a bear, and those bear trainer guys in circuses that are probably
I mean,
and people in Russia are not scared of bears,
and all Russians, 100% of Russians.
They're using grizzly bears to attack Ukraine right now. It's one of the few things the mainstream media hasn't reported, but it's
grizzly. We're gonna eventually hear about Zelensky defeating a grizzly bear in hand-to-hand combat.
Yes. That's how he became president. You had to defeat a grizzly bear, and
we should play a game on some show, maybe not this specific one, like actual like Zelensky story in the news or made up, like, and half the time will probably be not true.
Oh, actually, I actually was thinking about that for the boring show. I couldn't really flesh it out, but I wanted to do like real, or was it said to be Russian propaganda? Something along those lines. But anyways, so I don't think Timothy Treadwell really did anything wrong. I think he was not a lot crazy. Certainly kind of lost his foothold on reality, but I don't think he did anything malicious or, with ill intent. And, things happen when you're around a grizzly bear the whole time.
They're slightly different things, is doing something wrong and doing something malicious or ill intent. I don't think he did anything remotely malicious or with ill intent. I'm not sure if he didn't do something wrong, like depending on how we define wrong. I guess it's morally okay to put yourself at extreme personal risk, but also he's interfering with he is still doing what he is a hypocrite. So even by his own thoughts, he doesn't put it together that way, but he is doing something wrong. He's interfering directly with this same nature that he thinks people shouldn't interfere with. So that would be my big criticism of Treadwell. That he's not even his own mantras.
Yeah, I think that's a fair criticism, and I'm sure what he thought is like, I'm only interfering with nature to improve it. What God knows everyone else probably thinks the same way. Like, I'm just helping out everyone. As far as
I think one, and I don't even know if he put it this way. I don't remember him saying this during the documentary, but it seemed like he was talking more about the grizzly bears in that location and not talking about like the separate issue of like bears being hunted. I don't think he talked about that. It'd be one thing if he was just trying to draw attention to maybe when he went in schools, he talked about that. It'd be one thing if he was trying to draw attention. I wouldn't agree with it, but if he was trying to draw attention to bears being hunted and saying, look at these amazing animals, that they shouldn't be hunted, blah, blah, blah. I mean, I could argue with that, but at least he'll have a point. It didn't seem like he was even like making that point though, unless I missed it.
It never became clear to me what he was protecting them from. He kind of mentioned poachers, but a lot of the land was already a national park and protected. So he did mention other lands that weren't, but it was never made super clear. Like, this is the specific thing that I am out here for 13 years protecting the bears from. It's never really clear. Like, you never hear about a bear getting shot or killed, except for the bear that killed him. Ironically, the only bear we hear about dying is a bear that only died because of Timothy Treadwell, because they only killed that bear because they showed up to it killing, or I mean, obviously it was way dead by then. That's the only reason that bear was killed. It's because it killed Timothy Treadwell, and it only killed Timothy Treadwell because Timothy Treadwell spent 13 years in the bear's fucking face. So yeah, he killed a bear. I mean, that's what he did with what he did at the end of the day.
And why did they have to kill the bear? They're like, oh, he's got a taste for humans now. He's going to go on a rampage. Like,
taste for humans, like, yeah, the bear. You know whose NAP was violated is the bear. That's whose NAP was violated. Now maybe you can say the bear started it or something, but if you're at some point you're too far in someone's house and they're allowed to eat you, metaphorically or literally, depending on the situation.
It's the launch of our new brand, Bears of Liberty. It's gonna be way better than Lions of Liberty.
Bears of Justice, actually. The liberty is too associated with the alliteration. Not that there's alliteration in Bears of Justice, but still. I'm sorry, Rico. I interrupted you.
The second question and the final one I'll get to. What I thought of that. I thought the documentary was interesting. I never saw it before. I thought it was a little long. I could have gone chop it off about 15, 20 minutes, but
coming from the guy who watches an hour and a half 90 Day Fiance at least once a week.
But I watch it. Yes, I mean. There's so many different characters, Odie. If we had different characters that were bears or whatever, then whatever. But yeah. So I mean, it was a good watch. I definitely had heard about this guy, but I never watched it before. So here we are.
You're the only one that had never seen this before, huh?
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, I saw it I think pretty much when it came out. All right, I guess I should answer my own 3 questions. Yeah, I think I pretty much have answered them. I think my opinion of Timothy Treadwell definitely got lower seeing it this time. I remember 10 years ago and thinking what a great guy, or I don't know if I thought what a great guy. I'm just rewriting history. I don't really remember what I thought the first time, but I just remember liking the documentary. But this is specifically, somewhere about a third of the way through, I started to just be like, I think is probably Werner Herzog influencing me, because Werner was giving him a hard time. And I found myself pretty much agreeing with Werner Herzog. I'm like, yeah, he is creating this world. I mean, that was what Werner was saying the whole time. He's like, he's creating this world he's creating this world, this fantasy of his own imagination. Like, and there's the one shot. I think one of my favorite parts of the movie too was, besides the foxes did tickle my heart. I'm not gonna lie. He had the shot of the bear and like Treadwell's 10 feet away from the bear, like, oh, Mr. Bear, or whatever. And they zoom in on the bear's face. And there's just this look of like Timothy's talking to this bear like they're buddies, and you can just see from the look on this bear's face that he's not even thinking about this guy. It's the look of indifference, the indifference of nature, as Werner Herzog described it. And it really makes it clear how delusional, and it's sad but whether it's for a mental problem or a drug problem or whatever he had going on. Because my wife said this too. Like she's like, he's on drugs, dude. Like there's a lot of, and I thought he was just a wacky dude, and I still think he probably wasn't on drugs out there, but it's not completely crazy to think he might have been on drugs out there.
He very well could have been on drugs. That would explain a lot. Yeah.
It would explain so fucking much. And as from what I hear, meth's not that hard to come by in Alaska. So I don't know from my sources.
Is that how people act on meth? I don't think they act that way.
That's not a meth drug or act. Yeah. Plus, this was 22 years ago.
He was either on something or completely out of his mind. I mean, this cannot be disputed. One of the other.
I think he had already killed his brain, probably from all the other hard years of partying, and his I mean, there is permanent damage to extensive and long-lasting drug use. So.
I mean, if the stories are true that he was, trying out for Woody Harrelson's role in like that would have been like 1984 or 1985 maybe, and I mean that was 1984 Los Angeles, and he had a drinking problem that he didn't cure until 2000 or something, or sometime in the 90s, I guess, when he started going out with the Bears. That's probably at least a solid decade. Hanging out with the Bears. It's probably a solid decade of hardcore drinking. He's saying drinking, but it's got to be drinking and drugs and all this other stuff. So yeah, that probably doesn't just explain a lot. It probably explains so much.
Everything.
Not just why he's such a fucking lunatic, but why he probably did get healed in many ways. Obviously he was loony, but it probably was a healing thing for him to be there with the Bears. I mean, nature is fucking healing his shit in many ways. And to go from the crazy hustle and bustle, stress and whatever it may be of like Los Angeles and the whatever life he had previously there, it probably was very good for him, for his soul. But that doesn't make it good for the Bears or good for anybody else. And there's no evidence that he did anything other than maybe inspire people to like bears more, or to inspire people to like
not go around bears in the wild.
I think the saddest part of this story is, since I think we determined he did live in LA, right? And you guys moved out there early 2000s, right after he died.
You were probably there around the
you
same
could have
time,
been best friends if he hadn't been killed by a bear.
Only if Brian had run into a bar one time at 2 a.m, the world could be different.
Brian could have been eaten by a bear. Alas.
and Timothy Treadwell could be hosting a libertarian podcast. Welcome to Electric Bear Land, where I talk about bears every week with my good friends Brian and Marc. Meanwhile, we're reviewing a documentary about Brian being eaten by a bear. There's an alternate reality where all of that is what's happening. Welcome to Electric Liberty Land. Anyway, at the end of the day, I have sympathy for Timothy Treadwell. Obviously, I have sympathy for anyone who gets eaten by a bear, but he's a tragic figure. I'm sure nature and the bears healed him in many ways, but he created a fantasy for himself where he was one with the bears, and it was very obvious not by the end of the documentary, is obvious by the second we met him that this was all a fantasy. Sadly, I think there's less of a fantasy. I don't know. We should go back to Rico's conspiracy theory about the storyline with the foxes, because they seem like any other animal would play with if a dog was doing that, I wouldn't think that was weird at all. So it doesn't seem crazy to me. Like they're essentially the same animal, just a little more wild. It doesn't seem crazy to me that they would play with the hat and think that's a fun game and steal the hat. Like that's how all like canine type creatures like that are instinctually. They don't have to be trained that way. They're puppies and they start grabbing stuff and chasing each other. So it doesn't seem crazy to me, especially because a hat, like if they start to like him, a hat or some piece of clothing, they're attracted to things that smell like the person or the other animal or what have you. And so I don't think he created that, but I think, it was edited brilliantly by Werner Herzog into a coherent story. I'm sure all that footage of the foxes was over years and years and years, but I'm sure, this is like a 10-minute segment of the documentary. So I'm sure it was somewhat edited to, be a little more inspiring, but I thought it was cool. His relationship with I think he less imagined the relationship with the foxes because they did seem super relaxed around him. They would come up to him, he was petting the foxes. Like that seemed a little more genuine to me. But he completely imagined any relationship with the bears.
Well, the foxes aren't going to eat him. Well, if he died and was already like dead, they could eat him, but they're not going to maul him to death.
And you see him like reaching out to the foxes. It's just like it's like biting his finger, like, "Oh, you silly!" It's like, no, he would eat you if he was bigger.
Yeah, they're trying to. That's what they're trying to do right now. They're just not big enough.
So, yeah, I give Timothy Treadwell I'll go the Odie system. A thumbs in the middle for Timothy Treadwell. I have sympathy for him, but he created his own demise at the end of the day. And then Werner Herzog, brilliant documentarian. I can't get enough of his voice, and I like that he didn't just. I like that he inserts his own opinion very strongly in this. I kind of hate. I prefer documentaries that have an opinion actually, or that do like express an opinion than just pretending to be neutral because. Documentaries that pretend to be neutral are pretending. They're always pretending an opinion. So I like that he just doesn't fuck around. He's like, this guy is nuts. He created a fantasy, this and that. I think one part I didn't mention is when it's not funny per se, but I did kind of chuckle at it, which might say something about me. But when that woman, when he's listening to the footage, listening to the tape, they have footage. It's not video because he never took the lens cap off of him getting eaten, and they have the footage, the audio of it. So Werner Herzog, there's a scene where Werner and that chick that had the footage, who still never listened to it, she just possesses it. Supposedly she's never listened to it, and he listens to it, and he's like, "Yeah, this is why you should not be listening to this like at all." Like she's like, "Actually, this should not be listened to by anyone ever." Just me in this particular scene for this documentary. And he's like, you should never talk about this or thinking about this. Or really, no one should ever bring this up to you again, except me right now.
Never sell this to anyone. In fact, just destroy this tape right now so no one else can ever profit off it.
While he's talking to her about it. It's just, I found it funny. But yeah, I mean, it's very well put together. And I do like that he doesn't try to glorify Timothy Treadwell, which I think you could easily do in this with the same exact footage and really make him out to be a hero. He doesn't destroy him or like try to smear him or anything. He's fair. I think he's pretty fair in his analysis. So he comes across as a guy you have sympathy for and you feel for, but he doesn't portray him as this like hero of the bears or something that a lot of other nature documentaries would probably do. He was actually really hard on this guy that got eaten by bears, which takes some balls to do, because a lot of people might be like, "Oh, Werner Herzog's such an asshole. He's not sympathetic." You're like, "Nah, I mean, he's being honest," and I appreciate that about his approach to this documentary, is that he doesn't sugarcoat the situation at all. So
he also does like a low key questioning of guest stories or of Timothy Treadwell's friends, like the one person or the one lady that he would always go to, I guess, like on his way there. He would store his gear there at her place, and Werner goes, and she said that they were not lovers, but only friends, and just like leaves it open.
He definitely has a way of saying something without saying it, just like by changing his tone, just by changing my tone slightly when I say this thing. Yes, A+ for Werner Herzog. What was my last question? I agree. My favorite part of the podcast. No, I'm not going to repeat the answer. It's not the bonus segment. Talking about Rico's dinner. I enjoy that. I think I'm going to turn this into a niche industry. What's Rico eating? It could be a 3-day, the world's first 3 times a day podcast. Do you eat 3 times a day though?
Yes, I do.
Wrap up the way we started. I want to know more about Rico's eating habits.
Well, you want to? Okay. Well, in the morning, I have the same thing every morning. I have a kale and melon smoothie with protein.
Do you make your son make that too?
No, I don't eat usually. I don't start eating until about 10:45. So I'll have that smoothie. Then I'll have a 4-egg omelet, just egg and a little mix with almond milk. Then I'll have 2 scoops of.
Just egg.
No, on the weekends I'll go crazy and I'll have some cheese in that omelet, but not during the week. Wow. During the week it's clean eating and a little Greek yogurt. I used to put honey on it, but I'm stopped doing that for a while.
You eat a big breakfast, man.
Well, it's not that. Is that big?
I don't know. Huge, right? I have 2 eggs for breakfast every morning. That's it.
Wow. I either don't have breakfast depending on the day, or I have like eggs and beans, avocado. Yeah, about that. Sometimes a smoothie. Basically, whatever my wife makes is what I really have.
There you go.
Includes
need one
things.
of those. Yeah,
to help.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway. That's another podcast. That's a bonus podcast. Right. Stay tuned for What's Rico Eating.
Lunch is a whole other show.
This is why. This is going to be the teaser. This is why you got to tune in. The next time I do a bonus podcast with Rico, we're going to talk a little bit more about lunch.
Yes, lunch is off the rails. Completely bonkers.
Like that breakfast and then lunch is cocaine and whiskey with soy sauce. Wow. Okay.
2 out of the 3 meals have to be healthy. In the middle, it's cocaine.
All right, gentlemen. Anything else you want to say about anything? Do you want to tell us about your breakfast, Odie? Do you have a standard breakfast?
He said he eats 2 eggs.
I did 2 eggs.
Do you do it every day, or is there intermittent?
Except for the weekends. And the weekends, I'll add in maybe some sausage or bacon or some breakfast potatoes, but. What I like about 2 eggs in the morning is
hash browns
you don't have to think about it. I'm having 2 eggs. That's it. Just eat them and then drink my coffee and move on.
Scrambled over easy.
90% of the time, just over easy. Occasionally, I'll do a scramble.
All right. All right, that's enough information for me. All right, tune
More than
into
satisfied.
every time I do it, one of these Nittany shows. In fact, next time I'm not even going to do what they want us to talk about. I'm just going to talk about what we all eat. That's it. All right.
We'll bring in a chart.
How do we end these shows? Oh, yeah. It's been a really long time since a show has been ended in proper Lions of Liberty fashion. Let's see if you guys remember that my only request is for you to live long
and live free. And live free. And live free. And live free.
free.